Hey everyone, welcome to a special episode of the Noot News podcast. We're starting a brand new series of 2024 Cardinals player profiles. And we had to start it off with Lars Nootbaar. There was no other person we could do. So for these profiles, there'll be quick videos where we're just going to preview the players' 2024 season, what we expect from them, the narrative surrounding them, and then kind of what we think they will actually produce during the season. And so with Lars Nootbaar, the narrative with him, obviously, he's that StatCast darling. He's the international superstar. He's the World
Yeah.
Baseball Classic, the guy everyone knows, Shohei Ohtani's best friend. And he's proven on the field at times that he can actually live up to that potential, but he just hasn't really been on the field enough to do that. And to an extent, he's been more of a good player than a great player, even if he's had great stretches. But his overall
Yeah.
numbers are more of like he's a good player, but what's with all the hype? Sandy, tell me more about what you see Lars Nootbaar as and like why that narrative has kind of developed around him.
Yeah. So for those that have followed Lars Nootbaar, this is basically the second offseason in a row where we've had this Noot to the moon hype. A little bit of backstory here, right? So Lars Nootbaar comes up, I believe it was 2021 when he comes up, plays kind of a cameo, gets a cup of coffee. And at that point in time, definitely a fourth outfielder. I remember I have a tweet that if you dig way back in my profile, I said something about Lars Nootbaar should be included in a trade package today because people liked his glove. They liked his arm. At the plate, though, he just didn't seem like a guy that was going to get it done. He was an older prospect. And he ended up being like pretty decent. He held his own. And then in 2022, so 2 years ago, the last time the Cardinals were relevant, unfortunately, Lars Nootbaar was amazing. He came kind of out of nowhere, and he just all of a sudden developed into this guy that was clearly an everyday player. There was really no way the Cardinals were going to hold him back. And then in the second half of that season, Lars Nootbaar absolutely bonkers. Had like a 220 ISO power, which is slugging percentage minus batting average. So that's basically he was hitting for extra bases a lot. Not only that, he had a lot of bad luck too. So his batting average on balls in play was about 50 points lower than league average at about a 250. I know we're getting into the weeds with statistics here, but bear with me. And then the other stuff that was really encouraging, there's a stat called expected weighted on base average, which I know pretty advanced analytics here. But basically, this is something that says it analyzes the quality of the contact you make and then puts it on a scale with everybody else in baseball. And so Lars Nootbaar was way above average in this. So basically, he was hitting the ball really hard at optimal launch angles, and he wasn't striking out a lot. And so that's a recipe for success. That's what the best hitters in baseball do. And Lars Nootbaar was doing that. And so all offseason, everybody just goes absolutely nuts, gets on this Noot MVP train. And last year he delivered on it. He got better in a lot of ways. His strikeout rate dropped a bit more. He walked more, solidified himself as like a really good leadoff hitter. But he didn't jump into stardom like people wanted him to. And so, yeah, Josh is right. He's this guy that everybody agrees is like right below all-star level in terms of how he is as a player. But there is room for growth. And so that's why we're talking about him, of course.
Yeah, for sure. And like you look at some of the counting stats from like 2 years ago in 2022, he only became an everyday player in the second half, and he posted a 123 WRC plus after a terrible first half, 2.6 WAR, and then 2023 he was a 3.2 WAR player. So like he's proven to be a really good player when he's given sustained playing time.
100%.
And I was there with you, Sandy, on the fact that I didn't necessarily believe in Nootbaar being like that guy. When he first came up, I thought he was that fourth outfielder. I thought the hype was too much. But then you look at the underlying numbers and it's like, whoa, this guy like
really good.
Yeah, he's really good. And so even last year, the biggest issue with him is he just hasn't been on the field consistently. I mean, he came up in 2021, but he wasn't good enough to be an everyday player. 2022, the first half, he certainly wasn't. The second half, he was more than good enough, and he was healthy the second half for the most part. And then 2023, he comes in as the everyday player, but he only plays in 117 games. He had the finger injury on opening day when he slid head first, which is just a freak injury. That's not something that you're going to repeatedly do because he's just not going to do that often. He had a back injury, which is a real thing. So like, that's something you got to watch. But then he hit a ball off his groin in August and hurt himself. And it's like, okay, it's not like that happens all the time. So like, if that happens, a year like that happens again, then you start to be like, okay, maybe he's injury prone. But 2022 injuries seemed like fluky. But when he was on the field consistently, so his longest stretch of games was from June 19th to July or August 16th, which was coming off the back injury before the groin injury. He posted an 893 OPS and a 144 WRC plus. So
So
it
good.
really feels like the name of the game with Nootbaar is he has to stay on the field. And when he stays on the field consistently, he gets into a groove and he starts hitting the ball really hard. Like the first spring training game just happened, and I commented on it in our member live stream of just like the thing with Nootbaar is he hits the ball so hard all the time, but he hits into the ground. But when he starts playing consistently, he starts to those line drives start to happen, those fly balls start to happen. He starts to hit for real power, and that's the thing. He's just got to stay on the field. So Sandy, what do you think expectations are for Lars Nootbaar in 2024?
Yeah, I think expectations for Lars Nootbaar are he makes it clear that he's the leadoff hitter for the St. Louis Cardinals. This is a fun nugget that I was going to include. But Lars last year on opening day in that 10-9 loss to Toronto had 6 plate appearances, 1 base hit, 2 walks. Why am I telling you this? He had a 500 on base percentage on day one. His on base percentage from then never dropped below 360 all season long. That's an elite mark. Lars Nootbaar spent 0 days last year with an on base percentage under 360.
That's wild.
That's top 10% of hitters in baseball, probably better. And so for me, the expectation is he makes good on that. He continues to be a fantastic elite on base presence, and he hits for more power. And what that does is that vaults him from very good player to all-star caliber player. That's my expectation for Lars Nootbaar. And honestly, a successful 2024 for him would be getting an all-star nod. He doesn't have to be the starter. He doesn't have to win the fan vote. But getting that recognition around the league that he deserves as like a very talented player. And then at the end of the year, making good on that by like receiving a down ballot MVP vote or something like that. A la Kevin Pillar a few years ago, who had a great season and ended up finishing like 21st in MVP voting. For me, that would be a very successful season for Lars Nootbaar.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is the year he has to go from, is he just a good player that you can kind of rely on, or is he a truly great player you can build around, or
Agreed.
like not necessarily the center of the team, but he is one of the core pieces of the team. Because this is, especially for a Cardinals outfield that just consistently hasn't had consistency in the outfield. Their starting outfield opening day has changed every year for the last like 5 or 6 years. So what Jordan Walker in right field long term, you've got Victor Scott coming at some point. Left field is the position that he can lock down, and the Cardinals can have a consistent outfield for more than 1 year in a row and consistently go. Yeah. But then he can also be a core member of the lineup. So I think that's the expectation this year. Is the Cardinals are hoping he steps up and is a guy that can hit leadoff, hit third, hit sixth. Their lineup is so deep that hitting sixth is actually like a really good thing in this lineup. Yeah. But he's a guy that's playing over 140 games. So he's not a guy that, if he's playing 120 or less games in 2024, then he starts to become a real conversation of, okay, is this guy reliable?
Yep.
Like, I love his talent. He's not Tyler O'Neill unavailable, but he's annoyingly unavailable. And especially for a guy that requires being in the lineup to be consistently good. Okay, you got to be healthy then, Lars. So I think that's the expectation from the Cardinals. That should be the expectations from fans, and to be that like borderline all-star. Now, that's the expectation. Sandy, what do you think Lars actually does in 2024? So we're going to use Zip's projections for all these to give a little bit of a framework of what they're thinking. So coming off a 118 WRC plus season with a 3.2 WAR, Zips currently has Noot at a 242, 344, 441 slash line, a 114 WRC plus, a 2.4 WAR player in 136 games. What do you expect from Nootbaar?
So I think this is a little bit pessimistic from Zips, and I'm actually going to take the over on everything there, except maybe the games played. That's only got him missing 26 games if my quick maths is right. And so that's not crazy to me. Like, he's going to be a regular, and regulars sometimes play about 130, 135 games, but I think he's going to produce more value than that. I just think they're underrating his glove. Lars is a well above average fielder. Now, maybe not in center, but he can rack up a ton of value in left. So I think if he locks down one of those corner positions, even if they do play him in center, which I can't see happening with Victor Scott coming up, and we'll talk about him later, I think Lars is going to hit the over on that. I think he's got a better bat than that. That would be the worst year he's had in a full season at the MLB level, which just doesn't make sense to me if he's healthy, if he's getting into the lineup as consistently. So I think Lars is going to be somewhere around a 123 to 127 WRC plus. So kind of back to those numbers in 2022. And he might be even better than that. I'm really high on Lars Nootbaar entering this year. I'm really excited for what he can do. I think that by the end of the season, we're going to say Lars Nootbaar is a cornerstone of this roster, and he's somebody the Cardinals are building around long-term. They have control. Yeah, nothing else. Got to be positive here.
100% agree. I think this is the year. Again, he's got to stay healthy, but I think he is, because the injury concerns haven't been the soft tissue stuff or the stuff that just
Exactly.
reoccurring. It's the freak injuries. But again, we could be proven wrong. I think as long as he's staying healthy, he becomes a cornerstone player. There's with some within Cardinals Nation who don't understand the obsession with Nootbaar. I think that clearly ends, and on a national level, you have people who are all over Lars Nootbaar.
Hope so.
And I just think he's probably like a 4.5 WAR player next year. Like 5 is probably the highest I could see him do, but 4.5, because he occurred 3.2 in 117 games. I think if he's playing 130, 135, potentially 140 games, and again, he's better when he's consistently playing. If he's that 120 to 125 WRC plus guy, that's a valuable player in left field. So I think, he's not necessarily. He could actually lead the team in WAR. Like, I think that's a real thing. So you could walk away from 2024 saying Lars Nootbaar was the best player. I don't necessarily think people are going to walk away from 2024 thinking he's the most valuable player in the organization.
Sure.
But I think it'll be clearly he's one of the top 4 or 5 most important players for sure.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, Lars does have more to gain than lose here. I just want to add that real quick. Like you said, there's not enough to really have this narrative about him being bad or injury prone yet, and it would take a really bad season for that to happen. But I think what he has to gain here is he could really become the first consistent outfielder the Cardinals have had in a long time. Lars has produced 2 quality seasons in a row, doing so a 3rd year in a row. Even if it's not the ascension to these great heights that we're talking about, he would solidify himself as a really good player, probably the most consistent outfielder the Cardinals have had since like Matt Holliday, somebody that appears year after year and puts up a 115 to 120 OPS plus. Lars Nootbaar has a chance to do that. That's a really big deal.
Yeah. Well, we're pumped to see what comes out of Lars Nootbaar in 2024. Thanks for tuning in to the first player profile we've got. Please let us know in the comments or on Twitter what your thoughts are on this. We want to hear your projections, your thoughts for Lars Nootbaar. And on your way out, if you're new to the channel or you haven't subscribed already, please hit the subscribe button. Helps the channel out a lot. We've got our 2 podcast episodes a week. We've got some fun scripted videos we've been doing recently, but then also more of these player profiles coming. So stay tuned. We'll keep profiling the Cardinals for 2024. Thanks again for watching, and we will see you next time.